hello, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone, or wherever you may be, and welcome to another academic podcast convened by South Asia Research Institute for Minorities. In today's podcast, we will be covering the theme of conflict, citizenship, social justice, human rights in crisis situations. My name is Furqan Ahmed, and I have the absolute honor of having Professor Laitonjam Muhindro. Sir, please apologize if I mispronounce your name, who is a distinguished scholar, and his area of expertise include election studies, armed conflict, human rights, and peace studies. Let me say a few words. This podcast is commemorated for the International Day on Social Justice. And before we go to our question and answer session, let me take this honor to introduce our distinguished guest today, who is joining us all the way from Manipur, India. Professor Laitonjam Muhindro currently serves as the Director of Research and Development Cell, and he is also the former head of the Department of Human Rights at Kula Women's College under Manipur University. He also has achieved so many things in academic and research arena. He has done his PhD and MA in political science at Manipur University. He has also completed his postdoctoral fellowship at the University of Mauritius. Other than his teaching and professional or academic journey, he has also been affiliated with several academic organizations, NGOs, and institutions like International Political Science Association, IPSA. And through IPSA, we are truly grateful to have known each other. And I also have the pleasure of meeting him at Seoul during the World Congress last year in July. He is also the member of American Political Science Association. He's affiliated with International Foundation for Electoral System, Indian Political Science Association, and Indian Sociological Society. He's also the recipient of many academic awards, including the Professor G. Ram Reddy IPSA National Award in the cohort of 2020, International Barficio Award in the same year. He also has done some amazing publication, like more than 30 publications in reputed peer-reviewed and index journal. He is the author of 2 books. We will get to know about his motivation for writing these books. And he has also edited more than 8 volumes, including the subjects of conflict, transformation, citizenship, electoral integrity, human rights, gender justice, and global pandemics. He also has presented in more than 90 papers in national and international forums and has delivered 14 keynote addresses. And he also is serving as the editor-in-chief of SKWC Journal of Social Sciences, named after SK Women College. And that's pretty much all about it. So we will be extending our gratefulness to Dr. Muhindro for accepting the offer. So thank you so much, sir. And my first question would be, how do conflicts, particularly in the regions like Northeast India, impact citizenship rights of marginalized communities? And what role do human rights frameworks play in protecting these rights? Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Furqan. Thank you, and the South Asian Research Institute, Karachi, for giving me such opportunity to speak a few words and to make some conversations with the scholars. Actually, I'm not the expert on this field, but I have to share my experience. Okay, I apologize. First of all, if there is any kind of mistakes, let us forgive us. Thank you very much. So, in particular to that questions, Manipur is also within this Northeast India. Northeast India is comprising of the 8 states. Within these 8 states is also very popular in the sense that as a conflict state in India. Northeast state is a conflict state. Almost all the academicians also recognize. So here, this conflict affects the citizenship rights. How it is affect the citizenship? Even the conflict is unpredictable. Displacements and the documentation's loss is a very much because armed conflict often forces communities to flee homes. In the process, people lose essential citizenship documents. whether it may be birth certificate, ID cards, land records. Without documentations, marginalized groups struggle to access education, health, voting rights, or welfare schemes like that. Then government may adopt security-oriented policies that limit the political rights of certain groups. For example, restrictions on movement, assembly, or administrative classifications as non-natives, affecting their sense of belonging and their legal status. This is the main factor. This is main effect to the citizenship rights. Then statelessness risks, long period of hostility, neglect, or bureaucratic hurdles can push certain groups towards statelessness, particularly if their identity is disputed along ethnic, religions, or linguistic lines. Then, on the other hand, differential citizenship and identity politics also indigenous versus migrant debates. In conflict zones like Assam, debates about outsiders versus indigenous. So one thing I have to mention is that the northeast part is the bordering part of the international countries like China, Myanmar, Bangladesh. So almost all the people who are residing or who are living in the borderlines are some or more or less same ethnic groups. Say, for example, in the Bangladesh, in the Indian sides also, and in the Myanmar sides and the bordering parts of the Naga and the Kuki are the same ethnic groups people. Even the Manipuri who are also settled in other parts of the Bangladesh and the other parts of the Myanmar has also blood relationship. So there's a lots of issues of outsiders and insiders and the indigenous. So, in conflict zone like Assam, debates about outsiders versus indigenous residents profoundly affect citizenship. For example, the National Register citizens in India aim at identifying undocumented migrants has raised legal status anxieties among vulnerable groups. Policies like detentions for presumed undocumented status or exclusion from electoral rolls can disproportionately affect marginalized communities already under conflict pressure. Then, security laws with exceptional powers. Laws like the Armed Forces Special Power Act in parts of the Northeast India give security forces broad powers with limited accountability. This often leads to abuses, arbitrary detention, enforced disappearance, and torture, undermining citizens' rights. Then, in areas under special law, typical safeguards like fair trial protections can be weakened, the making citizens' rights de facto hollow. For example, the whatever the central forces, Indian armed forces can do in the name of the suspicions under this particular Armed Forces Special Power Act. So the human security is a very much a danger in the sense that none of the citizens who are residing here cannot feel the secure situations as this Armed Forces Special Power Act. Then social marginalizations and the violence. Conflicts often inflame inter-community tensions, marginalized communities, tribal minorities, religious minorities, women, Dalits may become target of violence, then exclusions or hate speech, impairing their equitable enjoyment of rights. Then conflict disrupts livelihoods and the markets, pushing marginalized groups into deeper poverty and limiting their access to entitlement programs tied to citizenship. Yeah, in the role of the human rights framework, yeah, the human rights instruments do not automatically eliminate right violations, but they establish standards, mechanism, and the principles for protecting citizenship rights. International human rights principles, universal protections, documents like the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, then International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, enshrine basic rights tied to citizenship. They provide equality before the law, then freedom from discriminations, then freedom of movement, then political participations, and the due process. Then no discriminations. Human rights law emphasize protections regardless of ethnicity, religions, or political status, especially important in ethnically diverse conflict zones. Then constitutional rights. Indian constitutions guarantee citizenship, equality, equal protections of law, and fundamental liberties. Courts have interpreted these to protect individuals and communities, even amid security concerns. Then, Indian judiciary system has occasionally intervened to uphold civil liberties. For example, procedural safeguards against arbitrary detention, then providing a check against excessive state action. Sorry. Then accountability mechanism. Here in India, National Human Rights Commissions, they can investigate abuses and issue recommendations, but they are quasi-judicial body. International review and fresh universal periodic reviews, then treaty reporting and the civil society reporting to United Nations bodies create external accountability pressures. Then when we talk about the civil society grassroots movement to protect this citizenship and to voice against the human rights violations, organizations and activists documents abuses, support legal cases, and raise awareness vital for advancing citizenship claim of marginalized groups. Then human rights frameworks provide language standards and international solidarity for such movements. Even though the tensions and the challenges, states often justify restrictions as necessary for security reasons, while marginalized communities see them as discriminatory and repressive. Perhaps the authority concerns they have to protect the rights of the citizens as a duty of the authority. They may restrict on some reasonable condition, some reasonable situations. On the other hand, the marginalized peoples feel that it may be the repression, it may be the discretionary attitude towards them. Balanced security and the rights remains a persistent debate. Then, on the other hand, not only in India, in the other international country also, the legal framework or the law and the procedure in the implementation part, the rights recognized on paper do not always translate into practice. For instance, Indian constitutions provided many rights for protections of the human rights for citizens, but in the actual form, it cannot be implemented in the right way. Lack of enforcement, weak accountability for violations, and the political pressures often blunt human rights protections. Then, as such, conflict based on ethnicity and identity, like those in much of Northeast India, make citizenship questions deeply political and emotional charge. Legal framework alone cannot resolve underlying grievances. Thank you. And next
Uh,
question.
Thank you so much, Professor Mohindro, for giving us the roadmap that is enabling such violences and in conflict zones in Northeast India's part. And you have like rightfully indicated all these issues. Uh, the major factor pertaining to these conflicts is the implementation or the introduction of armed forces, a special power act that is causing a lot of trouble in this northeast area of India. And so, from your introductory part pertaining to the conflict issues, I'll focus on your own research. You, and in terms of research that is focusing on citizenship and social justice, and also intersected the electoral integrity in conflict zones. Like, what steps can be taken to ensure both are upheld, specifically in the times of elections?
Thank you for questions. Then, yeah, the citizenship issues accept electoral integrity also. It's a very great concern because legal identity is central to voting. Without his name in the electoral roll, he or she cannot give the franchise. So elections typically require proof of citizenship and the valid identification to register and cast a ballot. Say, for example, as a result of the conflict, if he or she lost the identification document, how can he enter or how can he enroll in the electoral roll? That is the main problem. So conflict deserves documentations. Forced displacement, loss of records, or destroyed civil registries often leave marginalized people unable to prove. Then Legal identity is central to voting. So elections typically require proof of citizenship and valid identification to register and cast a ballot. Then forced displacement, loss of records, or destroy civil registries often leaves marginalized people unable to prove eligibility. Then large segments of affected populations may be disenfranchised or excluded from voter lists. Here, in this context, even those who are in the list of the voter sometimes cannot vote or sometimes use their franchise due to this conflict situations. In the sense that, in my personal experience, my community, I should say, who are residing to a particular community dominated area, those community restricted or forcibly threat not to vote because to elect their particular candidates. That's kind of the threat violate their franchise. This is also happen in some parts of the conflict areas where insurgency groups are living. Insurgency groups are currently active. Such kind of the violations of the electoral integrity are also seen in many parts of the northeast India, and in particular to the Manipur, because in the hill areas, many insurgency groups are settling. Even sometimes they are also feel, and even sometimes it is also said that there is a two kinds of the governance in Manipur, because without the permissions of those non-state actors, civilians cannot do anything. Even the state actors and even the legal governments compromise such rights. So conflict-driven politics often polarize around identity group, ethnicity, religion, languages. Then marginalized communities who may already face historical exclusions are often further sidelined, both in candidate selections and in access to campaign process. Then electoral role may be dominated by dominant groups sometimes, and sometimes those who are candidate of the major political parties may have influence when making the electoral rolls, even say outsiders and even the non-citizens peoples are also coming here, and they will make and they will manipulate documents to be entered to the electoral rolls to get their vote. This is also a very unethical nature of those candidates. If they do like this, then after few years, there will be another issue of the citizenship also. This is the main issue. Then mobility restrictions and access in many conflict zone, curfew, checkpoints, or security operations restricts movement. This curtail campaigning and prevents voters in remote and contested areas from accessing polling stations. Sometimes in the Rick's area of the polling stations, many of the voters cannot cast their votes. This is the reason, this is the effect of the conflict. Then fear and the violence, the threat of violence on or around election day, the real or perceived depressed turnout among those who feel unsafe. Women, ethnic minorities, and the disabled and the internally displaced persons are often least able to risk traveling to board without protections guarantee. Then, in terms of the justice concerns fit into electoral integrity, structural inequalities, unequal access to education, economic resources, and civic informations hinders meaningful participations. In the conflict area where they have migrated or where they have displaced, they have no right to access properly. Voters who lack access to informations or political debate are susceptible to manipulations or coercion. Social justice means not only the right to vote, but the ability to influence political outcomes also. When marginalized communities are not visible in legislative bodies, their interests are seldom prioritized in governance. including post-conflict reconstructions also. Then discriminatory laws and procedures, policies that tie citizenship to land ownership, family lineage, or ethnicity may disproportionately exclude certain groups from voting or standing as candidates. Legal framework that are not strongly right-based often fails to prevent exclusionary practices. Yes, there may be some technical or mechanical problems that one of my experience is that many people who have the right to vote but who have not to be the candidature is also found in some particular area. So this is also kind of the violation of the right to vote. This is also affect to the electoral integrity issues. Then human rights framework and electoral integrity. Human rights standards, both international and constitutional, play a crucial role in shaping fair elections in conflict settings also. And in the Universal Principles, Universal Declaration of Human Rights and the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights clearly mention that the right to participate in free and fair elections, then equality before the law, then non-discriminations in access to political rights. This norms provides a baseline for evaluating electoral conduct and citizenship inclusivity. Then domestic constitutional guarantees also, many countries, including India, constitutionally guarantee that equality before law, then political rights without discriminations, then the right to vote. Then in particular areas, in particular regions, the persons who have eligible of the voting right, voting age, should enroll to the electoral roll. Then they will get the right to vote and they will get the to be candidature, except those who are mentally unsound and who have the criminal background. Otherwise, everything is equality before law. Courts and the human rights commissions can enforce these rights, though implementations in conflict zone is often inconsistent. Then monitoring and accountability of the human rights framework support independent election monitoring, national and international also. Then complaint mechanisms for disfranchised voters, legal challenges to unfair process. But here is a very interesting story that as I have already mentioned that the constitutions provide many laws, very, very good laws are there, but in the implementations part, it is not very free in the sense that if any candidature or if any unwanted situations is uh, occur when we complain it to the concerned authority, they will take a long process. When they are taking a very long process in the court, even the term of the elections will over. So if the justice is provided after 5 years, then how the justice will be delivered in the real sense that the particular complainer is complaining to get the justice in a very uh, meaningful way. But if the justice is delivered after the expiry of the term, it is not justice, I should say. So practical steps to protect citizenship rights and electoral integrity to ensure elections are inclusive, equitable, and credible. Even amid conflict, several practical measures have been identified by practitioners and researchers. Mobile and decentralized registrations drives. Yes, in India, we have the electoral registrations, voter registrations is provided online and even can do from mobile. Then a legal safeguard to replace the lost documents without undue barriers should be provided. Then use of biometric or digital ID where appropriate and the right respecting uh, for the particularly for the IDPs also and the other marginalized groups also. There must be somewhat relaxations when they enroll the electoral rolls. Many citizens, many people who have mature of the 18 years cannot enroll in the electoral roll even they have no informations, and even they have not aware about the election in the remote areas. So inclusive voter education should be provided. Community-based civic education that is culturally and linguistically tailored, and information campaigns that explain voter rights and the process. Yes, in India, we have also organized awareness about the significance of the elections for national elections. In every year, National Elections Day is 25th January of every day, every year. With these commemorations of the 25th January in the National Election Day, Election Commission of India and the other concerned authority also taken up different strategies to give the awareness of the elections and how to do and how to give their votes. But the main thing is that they are giving such informations only on the some comfortable areas, not in the hill areas, not in the particular remote areas, not in the needed persons or marginalized groups, I should say. If they provide or if they give such information, it will be very helpful to the citizens to participate in elections also. Then protect physical safety also. Neutral election days security that protect voters without intimidations. But this issue is very much plenty in the conflict regions, because intimidations is a very frequent at the time of the elections in the remote areas. Even sometimes not to join the election campaign and not to participate in elections and not to favor on particular candidate. Lots of intimidations are happen. Then safe transport corridors and polling centers in high-risk areas. Then special provisions for women, elderly, and disabled voters should be provided. Then elections observations and the transparency. Independent observers, national or international, to report on fairness and transparent process. Open counting, accessible result publications. But one of the most important here in this context is in India, we have the parliamentary form of democracy elections. But the system of the past the post, majority carries the vote. Theoretically is very right, majority carry the vote. But practically, the winning candidate is not supported by the majority. This is the main issue. In the parliament, we almost consider that they are the representation, they are the representative of the particular constituency. But actually, it may ask that whether they are the representation or whether they are the represented to particular constituency, because lots of the voters are him, behind him in the sense that he or she is supported below the 50% and got elected. So how can we say that they are the representation of the people? But theoretically, they are competing with other candidates. Yes, they got the highest number of voters, so they win the elections. So theoretically, it is majority carry the vote, but practically it is not the majority carry the vote. So this is main issue. Then engaging civil society, then legal reforms also, constitutional and electoral laws must explicitly prohibit discriminations based on identity or status. Then judicial review and accessible courts to challenge irregularities. As I also mentioned that when we challenge the electoral malpractices, it will take a long time. So we cannot get the justice. Even if the justice is delivered, it is taking a long time. It will not be justice. Then dialogue and the peace process is also necessary. Parallel peace building efforts that address root grievances, land rights, then ethnic recognitions, economic inclusion, can reduce conflicts, corrosive effects on citizenship and electoral participations. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Muhindro, for providing the detailed overview of the issues pertaining to electoral integrity, specifically in conflict zones. I would pinpoint two major ideas pertaining to your remarks. One is that you summed up your entire conversation into one sentence, that winning candidate does not have the support of the majority. Plus, you talked about the delaying process that takes place while achieving justice. Like as they say, justice delayed and justice denied perfectly matches or perfectly fits with the examples of the issues pertaining to electoral integrity in conflict zones. Although you have touched upon like major parts of the entire podcast questions that were supposed to be asked, but I will be follow the decorum of this the theme. So you talk about the most pressing issues or the most pressing human rights violation faced by displaced population. In a bits and pieces in your early two questions, in conflict situation, like how can national and international human rights bodies better address their needs? I know we always keep on talking about, despite having the Bill of Rights such as UDHR, ICCPR, ICE, and SCR, even, I mean, having these many treaty-based and charter-based mechanisms, why we still need to readdress or answer, connect to this theme. So yeah, so how can national and international human rights bodies better address the needs of people residing in the conflict zones?
Okay, thank you. Yeah, a very concerned questions. Then displaced populations in conflict situations, whether internally displaced persons or refugees, face a range of pressing human rights violations that disrupt their security, dignity, and long-term well-being. Both national and international human rights systems have framework to respond, but significant gaps in implementations and accountability often remain. Below is let me say a few words that. So loss of basic security and protections, physical violence and exploitations, displaced displaced people are highly vulnerable to armed attack, sexual and gender-based violence, including rape and trafficking, forced recruitment into armed groups, and theft. Lack of protections from hostilities, ongoing conflict often encroach on displacement sites, creating continuous risks. Then inadequate access to shelter, food, water, and healthcare. Many displaced people live in makeshift camps or overcrowded settlement without adequate protections from the elements. Interruptions of livelihoods and aid delays create chronic hunger and malnutrition in regard to the food insecurity. Then water and the sanitation deficits. Poor access to clean water and toilets leads to outbreak of disease. Then lack of health care. Displacement undermines access to health services, including for chronic diseases, mental and child health and mental health. Then all these things, one of the most important thing is mental health. Even the government provide, let's see one example. If the government provide adequate resources and adequate the rights, whatever needed, but they cannot provide the mental free, mental psyche, because they have already migrated or displaced. This kind of the displacement they have already attached to the mindsets. If they have the inferior complex of this displaced mindsets, they have always inferior and they have always feel insecure. So mental health is a very big issue, not other physical issue. Mental health is a very big issue. Then barrier to education. Yes, children in displacement face disruptions to schooling, lack of supplies, and unsafe learning environments severely impacted their right to education. Then, on the other hand, economic marginalizations also, because loss of jobs, then farmland and the social safety nets pushes displaced families into impoverishment and dangerous survival strategies. We almost all the people have their habitual practices in their own settled area, but all these displaced persons, they will lose this kind of the habits. They will develop another situations, another habits. So this is also one of the main problems. Then Documentations and the legal status challenges. Many displaced people lost identity papers during conflict, blocking their access to legal protection, social service, voting rights, land and property claims, employment rights also, even sometimes. They have been facing lots of unwanted things. Without documentations, they are more vulnerable to arbitrary detentions or deportations also. Then discriminations and social stigma is also closely related to the mental health that displaced communities often face discriminations from host communities based on ethnicity, religion, language, or perceived outsider status. This exacerbates exclusions in jobs, schooling, and public services. Then impunity for human rights abuses. This is also very much plenty. That perpetrators of violence against displaced people often avoid accountability, especially in conflict zones where judicial systems are weak or compromised. Then, what national and international human rights bodies can do here in this context? Both sets of bodies have roles, but coordinated actions is very crucial in the sense that strengthen protections and security on the ground. National authorities should ensure adequate security around displacement sites without militarizing civilian spaces. Train police, train police, military, and humanitarian actors in respecting protection standards. Then establish safe zones and the reporting mechanisms for abuse. Then, on the other hand, international bodies like United Nations, regional organizations deploy humanitarian and human rights monitors and peacekeeping or observers missions to deter abuses. Then issue early warnings when violations escalates. Then support ceasefire agreements and protections corridors to safeguard civilians. Then let's see the guarantee access to basic services. National governments integrate displaced populations into national health, education, and social service systems. Ensure equitable distribution of foods, water, shelter, and essential supplies. Then, on the other hand, international organizations provide technical and financial supports through agencies like United Nations Human Rights Commissions and IOM, migrations and displacement, then UNICEF and the World Health Organization's health support and the World Food Programs coordinate with government to avoid redundancy and the gaps in service delivery. Then restore legal status and documentations, national level action, create fast track procedures to replace lost documents for displaced persons, then ensure that displaced people can obtain legal status without discriminatory barriers. Then international framework use guiding principles on internal displacement, United Nations endorsed but non-binding to self protections, seek integrations of refugee and IDPs protections into national law. Then promote accountability and justice. Human rights bodies can investigate rights abuse through commissions or special rapporteurs, collect data and documentations for future accountability, support domestic prosecutions or referral to international tribunals where necessary, issue public reports with findings and recommendations. Then on the facilitate durable solutions. There may be three durable solutions which I can suggest that return to the home areas in safety and dignity, then local integrations in host communities, then resettlement in third countries for those who cannot return. Sometimes those displaced persons may have fear and may have insecure when they return back to the original area. Then right bodies should monitor that returns are voluntary, safe, and sustainable. The ensure registrations includes access to land, housing, and economic rights. Protect against discriminations in host communities. Then strengthen participations of voice. Displaced persons must be consulted in decisions affecting their lives, included in planning and implementations of programs, and able to form committee or community group representing their interests. This participation is critical for accountability, relevance, and dignity. That is the issue.
Thank you so much, Professor Mohindro, for giving us the detailed overview of the issues faced by displaced population, specifically in the conflict zones. Uh, I mean, you have uh, highlighted many other like issues. I would be seconding your thought pertaining to the issues emerging as a result of this violation was the issues of mental health. And access to mental health is really an issue of concern. You have also talked about that the perpetrators who are perpetrating the violence moving freely without the absence of justice or delayed justice. You have given us the some of the recommendation of restoration of legal actions. You have talked about the role of international organizations such as IOM, UN, and UNICEF as well, who are providing guiding principles and recommendations to governments and state of Northeast India as well. You have talked about the international frameworks that provide guidance to IDPs as well. And lastly, you have very well said that the displaced population needs to be consulted in order to revisit their issues and their resources as well as a part of this process. So thank you so much for that. I will be moving to our question, which connects to the transformation strategies. Like how can conflict transformation strategies contribute to long-term peace and social justice, specifically in the regions where ethnic divide and political conflict create barriers to equal rights for all citizens?
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, in this very relevant questions that you put up, that conflict transformations goes beyond stopping violence. It seeks to change the relationship structure and narratives that produce conflict in the first place. In regions marked by the ethnic divides and the political contestations, such as part of Northeast India and even Sri Lanka, Myanmar, and the Balkans, conflict transformations is especially relevant because inequalities are often embedded in governance, identity politics, and access to citizenship rights. When applied systematically, it can lay foundations for long-term peace and social justice. From conflict management to conflict transformations, traditional approaches will have seen that ceasefires and security operations, short-term peace agreements, and conflict transformations instead emphasizes changing injustice structures and healing fractured relationships, reshaping narratives of us versus them, and institutionalizing equality and inclusion. This shift is critical in ethnically divided societies where formal peace may coexist with deep injustice. So, in terms of the structural injustice, we may say that reforming institutions and laws. Ethnic conflict is often sustained by unequal citizenship regimes, discriminatory land laws, or biased administrative practices. Conflict transformation contributes to social justice by reforming constitutional and legal frameworks to guarantee equal citizenship, ensuring non-discriminatory access to land, employment, education, and political representations, decentralizing power so local communities have meaningful decision-making authority. And in transforming identity and narrative from exclusion to inclusive identities, ethnic conflict thrive on narratives of trade, exclusions, or historical grievances. Conflict transformation strategies include intercultural dialogues and the truth-telling process, inclusive history education, and that acknowledges multiple memories, media and cultural initiatives that challenges hate speech and stereotyping. When identities are reframed from competing communities to share citizenship, social justice gains moral legitimacy. Then, when we come to the strengthening political participations and equal citizenship, inclusive democratic process, marginalized ethnic groups are often formally citizens but substantially excluded from power. Conflict transformation promotes inclusive electoral system and fair representations, protections of minority political rights, then participation of women, youth, and displaced persons in governance. Then healing justice and reconciliations, transitional and restorative justice. Long-term peace requires confronting past abuses. When these steps taken up, we may have truth and a reconciliation process, reparations and rehabilitations for victims, and accountability mechanisms that end impunity. These processes restore dignity to marginalized communities, reaffirm the rule of law, and rebuild trust between citizens and the states. Justice is not a threat to peace, it is its foundations. Then, when we talk on economic justice and the social equity, ethnic conflicts are often intensified by uneven development and resource control. Conflict transformation emphasizes equitable development planning, livelihood restorations in conflict affected areas, and fair resource sharing arrangements. Economic inclusion reduces resentment and makes peace materially meaningful. So, yeah, let's come to the role of civil society and the local actors. Top down solutions alone cannot transform conflict. Effective strategies involve, say, for example, grassroots peace building initiatives is very much needed, empowering community leaders and traditional institutions. Supporting women led and youth led peace efforts should be there to negotiate the confronting communities. Local ownership ensures peace is culturally rooted and socially legitimate. Then, in the linking human rights to peace buildings, conflict transformations explicitly integrates human rights principles, equality before the law, non-discriminations, and dignity and participations. Human rights provides normative standards for justice, then legal tools for accountability, protections against the return of authoritarian or exclusionary governance. So peace without right is fragile, then rights without peace are unenforceable. So why this matter in ethnically divided regions is in reasons why ethnicity defines access to power, citizenship is contested, and security overrides rights. Conflict transformations offers a pathway to substantive citizenship, not just formal status. Is rooted in justice, not coercion, than unity through diversity, not enforced homogeneity. Thank you, Furqan.
Thank you so much, Professor Mohindro, for once again giving us the detailed response in overcoming or and informing the transformation strategies that could contribute to long-term peace and social justice process. I mean, these are very much relevant to the entire population that we of the world. It's not just limited to the regions that we belong. All the issues that you've talked about, the inequality is often embedded in issues like these. We have talked about that there is a process from the conflict management to the conflict transformation. You have responded very well in the notion of or the narrative of us versus them, and very much relevant to this theme that we are discussing today. So moving to the last part, since we are running out of time. So very quickly, uh, given the contemporary rise of democratic erosion in various parts of the world, specifically in our region, how can human rights advocates ensure that social justice remain a central focus in democracies which are facing authoritarian backsliding or
Right,
backslides?
right. The contemporary web of democratic erosions. marked by executive overreach, weakened institutions, majoritarianism, the shrinking civic space, and the normalizations of emergency power poses a direct threat to social justice. In such context, elections may continue, but rights, equality, and accountability are hollow out. For human rights advocates, the challenges is not only to defend democracy procedurally, but to re-anchor it normatively in social justice. So, reframing democracy from electoralism to rights based governance, authoritarian backsliding often survives by reducing democracy to periodic elections while dismantling equality before law, minority protections, judicial independence, and social and economic rights. So, what advocates must do is reassert democracy as constitutionalism plus rights plus accountability, not merely majority rule. Frame social justice, equality, dignity, non discrimination as democracy's core legitimacy, not a peripheral ideal. Challenge majoritarian narratives that equate electoral victory with unchecked power. So, a democracy that abandons social justice ceases to be democratic in substance. So, defending institutions that mediate justice, democratic erosion weakens institutions that protect marginalized groups. Priority institutions to defend should be independent judiciary. Yes, almost all the systems and even in the India, they make claim that they have already independent judiciary. But how and why I here again mention independent judiciary is that priority institutions to defend this kind of the injustice is independent judiciary, then human rights commissions and ombudsmen, elections management bodies, then autonomous media and the universities. Advocacy strategy, then strategic litigation to defend institutional autonomy is very much needed, and international visibility when institutions are undermined. Then willing cross-sector alliance, lawyers, journalists, and academicians. Whenever we talk and whenever we set by the academicians, most of the political influencers and the politicians very easily they treated it and only they have considered whatever the influential persons and other groups suggested. So in creating marginalized voices, not abstract principles, that authoritarianism thrives when rights discourse becomes elite, technical or disconnected from lived realities. Then effective advocates elevate voices of women, minorities, the indigenous groups, migrants, and the displaced. Link democratic decline to everyday injustices, loss of welfare assets, policing abuses, land dispossessions, labor precarity, and support community-led documentations of rights violations. So, in linking economic justice to democratic survival, a key driver of democratic erosions is economic inequality, which fuels resentment and authoritarian populism. So, human rights advocacy must treat housing, health, education, and labor rights as democracy issues, not scholarly concerns. Expose how authoritarian governance redistributes resources upward while blaming minorities. Advocate rights based economic policies that reduce inequality and restore trust. So, strategic use of law, defense and offense, defensive lawyering, the challenge emergency laws, then surveillance regimes and the restrictions on dissent, defend activities, journalists and the minorities criminalized under vague security laws. So, use constitutional guarantees and international treaties to expand social rights, file public interest litigations to enforce welfare, environmental justice, and minority protections. Here, reclaiming the narrative space. Authoritarian backsliding is sustained by narrative control. nationalism, fear, and a moral panic. Advocates must counter security versus rights and a majority versus minority frames. Develop accessible, emotionally resonant narratives connecting rights to dignity, safety, and fairness. Use culture, art, and digital media to humanize injustice. Social justice must be felt, not only ours. So, building transnational solidarity without losing local legitimacy, while authoritarian governments often legitimize rights advocates as foreign agents, isolation is equally dangerous. So, use international human rights mechanisms for pressure and protections, anchor advocacy in constitutional values and local histories of justice, will South solidarity among democracies facing similar erosions. That's much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mohindro, once again for your response pertaining to the issues that are being faced in the process of democratic erosion. Uh, I mean, there are like two, three major countries which are facing, which are on the verge of becoming an authoritarian rule. I don't want to necessarily name them. You already know their names, right? So, I mean, but we're still optimistic as a human rights advocates like you and like me, that there is still a long way to go. We are very resilient people in terms of what we are facing. So once again, a quick recap to what you have covered so far. You have very expertly responded to the questions of conflicts, specifically in the Northeast India, and you related this issue with the historical and the border linkages of this part of the Indian terrain. You have talked about very briefly regarding the citizenship and social justice intersection of into electoral integrity, specifically in the conflict zones. You have given us so much of resolutions and solutions and policy recommendations pertaining to the issues of human rights violation faced by displaced population in the conflict situation as well, and the role of international and national human rights advocates. You have also given us a very, I would say, thoughtful and relevant information pertaining to the uh, conflict transformation strategies and as well as the democratic erosion. So I would term this podcast as a very much academic, and it's very much relevant to the students of human rights, political science, peace studies, international relations, and conflict zone as well. And I would encourage all of you to keep on connecting with our social media networks and social media handles to get yourself enlightened with professor like Dr. Mohindro. So thank you so much, sir, for joining on this very relevant theme. And we will hope to continue to collaborate to bring some synergies and like-minded issues and topics in times to come. Thank you so much.